many, many accolades. I will have to try to just name a few because there is a lot of them. He has performed in several plays and operas and has been featured in multiple billboards of musical recordings. Has appeared in television for ABC and their own network. With a Master's of Science in Business from Nova Southeastern University, Mark has worked in local government with Orange County and the city of Apopka for more than 12 years. But today, we're delighted to have him in here in our museum to share his family history. He's a fourth-generation Apopkan, and with much excitement, it brings me great pleasure to introduce you to Mark Wright-Ahern.
Thank you for the opportunity to be able to share a little bit about my family and a little bit about myself. I'm honored, and I am a lifelong Apopkan. I've had the pleasure of doing so many great things here in the city of Apopka, and Apopka truthfully is where my heart is. I have always loved being able to share and give back to the community that has given so much to me. So with that being said, I'll start a little bit with a history. I was blessed and lucky to have the opportunity to be alive or be around when my grandfather, my great-grandfather, was still here. He goes by Sibo. Many know him as Sibo, but his real name is Cephas Bowden. And Cephas Bowden Sr. Came from Newton, Georgia. And he established his family here. Now, to give you a little bit of information about Sibo himself, Sibo had several other brothers and sisters. And during that time, he did not get a chance to go to school like other students would have because his mom was by herself and she had to help with the children. So instead of getting educated and going to school, he actually took care of the family. So he went out and worked, and he learned how to use his hands very well. And with that being said, he never learned how to read, never learned how to write, but he knew money. That's one of the things I can definitely say. He knew money, he understood the money system, and he was very good at it. So when he moved to the Apopka area, he was a concrete finisher, and he actually started a concrete business. So many of the things that you see that was built here in the Apopka area, he was a part of that. The church, St. Paul AME Methodist Church, which is here on Park Avenue, he actually helped to build that church. He also helped to establish many of the buildings and roadways that we have existing today. Many of those roadways are still here. So it's a blessing to have such a long line from my great-grandfather. So with my great-grandfather, he had 10 children of his own. He also had two twin girls, but they ended up perishing. And my mother's mother was Doretha. Now, Doretha was one of his older daughters, but Doretha passed away in a car accident on 441. And so when my mom was very young, at the age of 8, she ended up staying with my grandfather, Cephas, and my grandmother, Frances. So they raised her and her brothers and sisters. So my grandfather had an additional 5 kids added to his household. So he had his 10, and then he had his daughters, 5 children, added to that. So he raised my mom as if it was his daughter and her siblings. So when I came along, my mom had me at a very young age. My mom truthfully had me at the age of, she was turning 16 right before she had me. She was, her birthday was January 31st. I was born January 2nd. And she was still 15 when she had me. She turned 16 at the end of that month when she had me. So my mom was very young when she had me. So that meant that my grandfather and my grandmother, Frances, had to help her as she was still in school and as she was, going through life to raise me. So that added another child. So now he had 16 kids. My grandfather says that he raised a total of 17 children, and that was including his grandchildren and some of his great-grand. So I was blessed with the opportunity to spend a lot of time with my grandfather. He had the concrete business, so in the daytime he would go out with his sons, and he taught his sons how to do the concrete business and be involved in that. And so they would go out in the early morning, get up at about 4 o'clock in the morning, and they would leave the house. And then when they would come back, he would then go to his farm. He had a pig farm down on Claricona Road. So he would go to his pig farm, feed the pigs, and when he would come home after I would get out of school, that was part of my job to go and work with him to feed the pigs. So it was a great time with my grandfather. He lived to be 92 years old. So it was a blessing to be around and see the longevity of his life. It was very difficult when he left because he really was the backbone of our family. My grandmother died when I was younger. So she died when I was about 8 or 9 years of age. And so I got to spend a lot of time with her as a kid because I was always at their house. But I didn't get to spend as much time with her as I did my grandfather. So he really put a lot into me as a youth. And one of the great things that my grandfather would say, he says, if you have a nickel, save a penny. If you have a dime, save a nickel. He says you always need to have something saved because you never know when you're going to have a rainy day. And then one of the other things he says, that little pink thing that you have in your mouth is very powerful. And he says, be very careful to what you say with that. It holds a lot of things in life and death. So be careful to what you say to people and how you present yourself. He always said, be slow to speak and be quicker to listen. So my grandfather would instill a lot of things that I still use today into my life. And then we move on to my mother's father, which, because as I mentioned to you before, my mother's mother passed away when she was young. My mother's father really wasn't as involved, and so he moved up north with his family in New York, and so he went to Buffalo, New York, and so that's one of the reasons why my mother ended up here. Now, on my dad's side is a Bennett, and technically he's a Smith, but he kept my grandmother's maiden name, which was Catherine. I got a chance to spend a lot of time with my grandmother, Catherine Johnson. She was the staple of that family, and she helped to raise, me involved in my life. She was always there for school, always giving, and always, desiring. Now, one of the unique things is that all these families somehow made it to Apopka. Some of them made it here from Alabama, some of them made it here from Georgia, but somehow they all came here to the Apopka area. And Apopka, most people in Apopka are either related in some form or fashion, or they are somehow married into the family somehow. So it's a very small community, and so I was blessed with the opportunity to, have a really strong sense of community. That was one of the great things about living in Apopka. You couldn't go somewhere without knowing someone or running into someone. The life that my grandfather set was one of a godly man, one that, people really loved to respect him, and they respected him, which also allowed his family to be respected. He was born in 1910, so he grew up during a lot of things during that time, but the one thing is that he had a name in the Apopka area that people respected. So in his business, back in the 80s when I was a little kid, my grandfather was making so much money as a concrete finisher and working in the concrete business. It was impressive. I was so surprised to how much he was able to do with his business. So that went into his children. His son, Cephas Bolden Jr., is still alive today. He is 81 years old. and he still lives here in the Apopka area. His sons are still in the concrete business. Wow. So that whole generational training and trait, they've passed it down. And so I have cousins and other family members that are still practicing the concrete business. Yes, ma'am.
One thing, after doing the genealogy of a huge family in South Apopka, who I found out I'm related to from LA, Lower Alabama, is that cousins were dating cousins. And I think that almost anyone in Apopka needs to have a DNA test before dating. After they found out and the parents found out that they had been dating cousins. They had wished that they had done their genealogy when they were young.
Yeah, so it just, there's so many people and still today that are related. So when I come to Apopka, almost, I would say probably a good 40% of the people that are still here in Apopka are somehow related to me, either on my mother's side or my father's side. And then on my grandmother's side, the Sims, which many of them became Guns. I don't know if you ever heard of the Gunn family, but the Gunn family is technically the Sims. And the Simmons family are still here, and they too are doing great things. One of the great things about those who came before me is that they really put a lot of growth in us about education. So many of my cousins and things like that, many of us have degrees. As you heard mentioned earlier today, I have a master's degree in business management, and I also have a degree in music performance and religion. But not only did they put, the fear of God in us, but they also made sure that we were able to have longevity. And so education was a really big thing. So where some families didn't get a chance to grow as much, my family as a whole, many of them are very, very successful in their own right.
On the screen now, and the people in here will be able to see it in person, and they'll be able to watch it on the video. But as you can see, Raleigh Simmons, which was your great-great-great-grandfather and grandmother, at 49, the census said that he had no education whatsoever. That meant he never went to first grade. She never went to first grade, but they put their children, and it said they had some schooling right on the census, and you can see that. But then when you also see where SyFy or SyFus filled out his World War II card, it has an X and it says his mark. He could not sign his own name. My grandfather, personally, I had to fill out checks for him, and I had to read to him. And this was in the 70s and 80s that I had to do that for him. He could sign his name ruggedly, but he could not write.
And so that was something that they really wanted to make sure. The business world, for a man who couldn't read, couldn't write, he was very successful in making sure that the longevity of what he knew how to do went on and was passed on generation to generation. And so many of my cousins and things have been very successful in the concrete business, but they now have degrees and so the business has transformed into something a lot bigger than what he even had back during that time. So it's definitely a blessing. When it comes to the Apopka area as a whole, as I mentioned to you, Apopka itself gave a lot to my family and the community. As I mentioned to you before, my mom had me when she was very young. So it took my grandparents, it took aunts and uncles to help to contribute to my success. It took church. A lot of the pastors and things in the area, they worked with me, they prayed with me, and they gave me opportunity. And not only that, but it took some of our politicians. And so I want to talk a little bit about that as well. Many of our politicians also put a lot into me as a whole. Right now we're in a very heightened time, and things are so sensitive and people are so sensitive about so many things. But because of the success of my grandfather, training my family on how to get along and how to interact and to make a difference, it allowed us to be successful as a family. And so with that being said, when we speak or when we went somewhere, people wanted to know who we were. Who were we connected to? What family were you connected to? And so with that being said, when I started to sing a little bit, people found out that I had a great voice. And one of the people who actually contributed to my success was Mayor Land, Mayor John Land. He, when I was in middle school, heard me sing and so forth. And by the time I got in high school, Mayor Land heard me do Showboat, Old Man River from Showboat. And he heard me sing that, and he was like, is that a recording or is that something, you know, someone singing that behind the stage? And Linda Booth, which was my choir teacher at that time, said, hey, no, this is this young man. And Linda Booth is still teaching today. She's over in Windermere. And one of the great things is that it took Linda Booth, it took Mayor Land, and they put me into a path that opened up doors for me in the opera world. And so that's how I got involved in the opera world, because they actually, Linda Booth spoke with Mayor Land after Mayor Land heard, and Mayor Land said to her, how can I help this young man? And she said, hey, you can give him voice lessons or pay for his voice lessons. And so he paid for my voice lessons through high school and through parts of college. So that changed my life. Not only did it change my life, but it also changed my family's life, because it exposed us to an area that we had not been in before. The world of opera. Truthfully, there's not a whole lot of African-American people in the opera world. And just recently, I was blessed with the opportunity to be able to be put on the board for Opera Orlando. So I was part of Orlando Opera Company as just a performer before, but that company had filed for Chapter 11 during the hard times. But now the new opera company, which is Opera Orlando, when it came back up and opportunity showed itself, I am also a performer with Opera Orlando, along with being on the board. So it's really interesting how life changes. I was also blessed with the opportunity to even start my own business as well here in the Apopka area. I had a company called Shout Talent Entertainment and Promotions. And so I've been blessed with the opportunity to work with celebrities all over the world. I've traveled extensively performing classical music, but I've also done television. This upcoming year, in 2021, I will be featured in a movie that was shot just recently, and I have a pretty large part. I am Dr. King in the movie. So it will be coming out as a full featured film. And so it's really interesting how God opens up so many doors for you and gives you so many opportunities. Also here with me today, I don't want to leave this out. Some of you see that my name is Wright-Ahern, which comes from my grandfather's side. But I am a Wright, if you look at the genealogy. But my husband is here with me today, and I got married in 2015. And so I have a hyphenated name, which is Ahern. So we hyphenated our names together because we wanted to both keep our names and also be able to celebrate the ability to be able to be married in the same sex. So I want to thank my husband for coming with me today as well. So that's a little bit about my family. That's a little bit about me. There's so much that can be said. There's so much that has happened throughout the years. The people that have touched me and those who have been in connection with me have definitely changed my life. I also give a lot of thanks to my stepfather, which your president, Francine Boykins, that is, my stepfather is her, she is his niece. So with that being said, that's another family tree line that I'm heavily connected to. And with that, my stepfather and his family treated me as if I was their blood. And they poured a lot into me. And that bloodline goes very far back as well. You have his mother, which is Ella Scott, and she was born back in 1901 as well. So she lived to be 90 some years old as well. So it's very unique to how all these different bloodlines. And for those who are watching, if you haven't had a chance to look at your bloodline, because truthfully, sometimes we forget about those things and we don't really think about it as much, but it really is important to look at and see where you come from and see how those who came before you paved the way for you and also gave you the opportunity to be who you are today. So do anybody have any questions about anything so far? Any questions, any comments?
Are you going to bless us with your voice?
I am. I am. I just mentioned to you about the movie, Just a Closer Walk is the name of the movie. It will come out next year. And if you want to see me and my husband, we were also in Sharknado. We had very small parts in that. Sharknado 3, we were in that when it was filmed here. And, you know, I'm just so happy to be able to share with you guys a little bit today. I'm going to sing one of my favorite songs. It's called Deep River. Thank you. And thank you guys for watching on social media on Zoom. So, and hey, Cousin Francine.
Thank you, Mark. Wasn't this wonderful? Thank you for your attendance. We hope this presentation inspires you to look into your own family history. The museum is always open to volunteers. Please reach out through our website, which is apopkamuseum.com, and our newly added link to the City of Apopka website. Thank you again. And just when you go to the Apopka city website, just click. All the information will be there for you. And we'll see you soon with another edition of History from Apopka.
Please go to the Apopkan history on Facebook, and you'll be able to access some of our history. This Zoom video will be on there, and you'll be able to review it again. We hope to have another edition soon. I'd like to cover using Ancestry, and you saw a bit of Mark's family history on there that I did last night, finding some new things that he had never seen. His great-great-grandparents' marriage license, and he had never seen that before. The X-mark, the education of his family, and being able to pull all that together from never having any birth dates or anything, just his grandparents' names without any ages or anything. So you can go back, way back into your family history, and a lot of it can come right out of this building. And the main thing is to come in and explore. Miss Mabel is going to have the building open a few hours, 3 days a week. And you can come in and volunteer. You can join online or come in and join. There are some books about Apopka history in the local area here that you can buy. You can pay for it online and come pick it up in person. A couple of them you can buy online and have them shipped directly to your home. But coming in is the main thing, of being able to see artifacts, see pictures of your ancestors that were here, or if you're new, come and find out about Apopka in person. So we're going to call it quits for today, but there's always a future, and come and learn about your past here. Thank you. Have a nice day.